It probably wouldn't surprise most of the people who know me to know that I love old things. That's not a thing that should surprise people. If you see what Nick does on a day-to-day, part of my job is taking care of historical things. And that's not just a thing that I do for a job, it's a thing that it's part of who I am. And so I love heirlooms and things that have been passed down. And in our home, we have things that have been passed down to us, furniture and china. And we have stories around many of those things that relate to my family's life and history. Some of those stories have pieces that have been lost or expanded, but there's an internal narrative in our family about the meaning of these things. Now, one of the places, if you love old things, if you love antiques or stories or history, that you could be engaging in our world is a place through a television show on PBS called Antiques Roadshow. I don't know if you've ever seen Antiques Roadshow, but the premise of the thing is that people bring old things to experts who then give a sense about the value. And in the process of finding out the value, there's questions about the provenance of the items and where they came from in the stories. And so it becomes a neat way for people to both get a sense of the value of what they have and also to tell the stories about the place this thing holds in their families. So in Antiques Roadshow, standard clip, if you've ever seen it, runs about 2 to 3 minutes. There's sort of an item sitting between both the expert and the person who's brought it, and they ask questions about the item. And ultimately, the reveal comes down to two things. First, have you used this thing, and how does the use increase or decrease the value? And then, is it valuable to some external audience? Is there a market for the item? If you went into a store to try to purchase the item, what would it look like to try to purchase it? So of course you have items that are well loved. They've been used at every Thanksgiving, or grandpa wore this watch for 30 years, or it's been a thing passed down and everybody puts it on their mantle or whatever. There are well-loved things like that have value. And then there's things that the expert looks at and says they either have value or not. So you can imagine there's well-loved things that are valuable. There's unloved things that were forgotten that are valuable. There are well-loved things that aren't valuable. It's a story, it's got sentimental value, but in terms of someone purchasing it, doesn't have much value. And then there's things that are both unloved and unvalued, and everyone kind of shrugs and says no big deal. Now the last piece of this is that sometimes people have an idea about the value of the thing that they've brought. So that there are people who say, well, I think this is really valuable, and we had it assessed and it was worth, or we had it appraised by so-and-so in 1997 and they said it was worth this. And obviously there can be big chasms between what somebody thinks a thing is worth and what it actually is worth. Well, SDBs as a people, we have a theological heirloom that we pass on inside our kingdom families that's unique to us, and that's the Sabbath. Generations of Seventh-day Baptists have kept the Sabbath faithfully, have found blessing in it. It's a central part of the rhythm and the way that our lives as individuals, as families, as kingdom families have been structured. It's a loved and valuable thing inside the family. And passing that thing on is biblical, and not only among Seventh-day Baptists. If you go to the Old Testament, what you see in the book of Deuteronomy is that after the Ten Commandments are reaffirmed by Moses, and the commands are kind of summarized in Deuteronomy 4 and 5, that in Deuteronomy chapter 6, then Moses says this, "And these words that I command you today shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise. You shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. You shall write them on your doorposts of your house and on your gates." In other words, this thing that God has given in the Sabbath is meant to be a thing that we engage in family, that's a thing that's before us, that we use, that we engage, and that has value to us as a result. Now, it turns out that it's not only valuable to us who keep it. God thinks it's valuable also, set it aside and made a special space for it. But here's the last piece for y'all today. This Sabbath we have is not only valuable to us. As the amount of work increases and the space for real rest decreases, real rest becomes more valuable by the day. Which leads me to this. If you and I want our Sabbath to be a thing that we can expand and multiply the rest of and the people around us. If we want to see that rest we have in Jesus Christ and in the Sabbath to be multiplied, then we have to handle it like it's something valuable. And we have to continue to use it even though it's valuable. Like that expensive dish we find out that's too important to put on a shelf somewhere or sell or give away or make small in our eyes. We have to actually go out and do something with it. So here's my question for y'all. How are you handling your Sabbath? You've received it. Do you pull it out? Do you use it? Do you build meaning about it in your church, in your family? If we were going to take your belief to an expert and find out how valuable it was to you, what would they say? If it's not valuable to you, it won't be valuable to the people that you want to give it to. But the great thing about our Sabbath is that we can both keep it and have it be valuable to us and give it away. We can multiply that rest. Let's multiply that rest together.